of creation. In this we pray. Amen. Each Sunday I'm here with you, I am going to try and highlight a conservationist, ecologist, someone who is out in the field. And today I'm going to be highlighting and quoting from Aldo Leopold. He lived between 1887 and 1948 and is widely considered to be the father of wildlife ecology and modern conservation. If you like those things, you might have heard of what he is best known for, the land ethic, which is about an ethical, caring relationship between people and nature. So we're going to hear a little throughout this sermon from Mr. Aldo Leopold. But what I want to first talk about with you is something that I think you all are aware of unless you are living under a rock. And we do welcome those who are rock dwellers, but I think every single one of us knows that there's this funny World Cup thing happening. This soccer tournament that, is taken over Seattle and our country. And it's interesting watching this. I am a soccer fan, but I am a women's soccer fan. I am struggling with all the falling down these men do. That aside, it's interesting watching the World Cup, and one of my favorite teams this World Cup is Norway. And this is a welcoming, inclusive space. You can boo at coffee hour. But I love their star player, Holland, this giant Viking of a man. And I read something recently about the difference between Norwegian soccer and the rest of the world. Why he always looks like he's having the best time ever, doing the craziest things ever. And you see, something is very fascinating about how Norway starts their kids in sports. It is illegal in the country of Norway to rank children before the age of 13 in sports. You cannot have anything within your sports structure that makes children have to compete in a way to be the best. That is very different than how American children sports work. I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, and we're dragging them all over to every kind of sport, and it gets under my skin more than anything when I see teams and coaches especially who completely forget that these are kids playing a sport, learning how to play something like soccer or baseball, and treat it like they are the coaches of the major leagues or the World Cup. What happens when we take away this need, this desire to be the best, the fastest, the strongest, that this idea that even at 6, 7, 8 years old, kids are competing to be the next Messi, the next Mbappe, the next, well, she's not playing anymore, but I would say Rapinoe. What would it look like if there wasn't this competition? I mean, we're still scoring goals. We're still having winners and losers. But at the end of the day, it is about building community and teamwork and, frankly, fun. Watch Norway the next time they play, whether you want them to win or not. And it is noticeable. It is noticeable with their team and with their fans. This just love of the sport. Why do I bring this up? Not because it's, the biggest thing in our news and community, but also because it actually relates to what we are talking about here in Genesis. It relates because this 2 verses that were used to be up there are verses that have been taken and used to create a culture within the church and world of competition. When we hear words like subdue and rule, it has been taken for many to mean that it is about who owns the most land, who's the strongest, who can whip that earth into shape. And even though you can take these words and you can break them down to their original Hebrew, and they still mean just what you think they mean when it comes to subdue and ruling, there's something else happening here. Aldo Leopold said, conservation is getting nowhere because it is incompatible with our Abrahamic concept of land. We abuse land because we regard it as a community belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. When we go back to the beginning, what we hear over and over about the land, the fish, the birds, all these things we're meant to subdue, we're meant to rule, is that it is good. It is good. What does God say in chapter 1 of Genesis? After every moment of creation, God looked and saw and said, it is good. When we think about subjugation and we think about ruling powers, especially in our world today, we think about it as control. That when we are going to subjugate something, we're doing it because it is out of line and wrong. It needs to be brought back into control. But it's more than that. Because if you look at the Webster's Dictionary, it describes subduing as not destruction or permanent oppression. Rather than crushing or wiping something out, subduing means bringing intense energy, emotions, or wild environments under control, taming them or reducing their force. It is about managing and organizing rather than obliterating. Because it is good. In context of the narrative of Genesis, we have not had Eve eaten any apples. We have not gotten thrown out of paradise yet. So when we hear these words about subduing and ruling, we are talking about paradise. Think about that. Even paradise had weeds. Because isn't, in essence, that sort of the vision when you think of it in that way, that there are parts of nature, parts of our community and world that are like a weed that need a little plucking and pulling and maintenance. We don't just let everything run and grow buck wild. Nature in itself, when we watch it in its beautiful intricacy of play and community, it will begin to sort of subdue itself sometimes. We've seen this over and over again when we take critical plants or animals or insects out of nature and we watch how it wilds out in a very chaotic way. My favorite animal is the North American beaver. And the North American beaver is a fascinating animal to learn about because it is one of those things that got almost completely wiped out during the fur trade in our history. And it did get completely wiped out in the UK. And there has been this conservation effort across Europe and the UK and even in North America where they're reintroducing beavers into community. And what often people thought was very annoying dams that messed up the flora and fauna is they're actually finding like flooding problems that have plagued communities for decades, that every engineer of the smartest engineers you could put on that problem couldn't fix it. And they introduced a couple of beavers. You laugh, but it's true. They introduced a couple of beavers, and suddenly the floods that were ruining crops and flooding homes that could not be controlled, no more problems. And you look at a beaver, they're really cute. But you wouldn't think to yourself, that is a key player in community. When we look at this idea of ruling, of subduing, we think of it often from a very sort of hierarchical lens, or really as a very patriarchal lens. But did you notice what that verse said? Did you catch it? I didn't use the NRSV version, so I apologize. There were a lot of he gods in there. But did you notice where it said God created mankind or humankind in God's own image, both male and female? And it was good. I don't know where this whole men get to have all of the control and fun happened, because if we go back to Genesis 1, God says it is all genders. And as the UCC, we like to expand that. It's non-binary, it's trans, it's everybody is being called to rule and subdue the land. This is not one person's job. It wasn't just Adam getting to name all the animals. Eve got to as well. That's probably the good animal names. See my bias. But it reminds us that this concept of subduing, this concept of ruling is not one person above telling you what to do and how things should be done. It is meant to be done in community, and everyone is responsible for the subduing and the ruling of the land. I got to find my right quote here. Aldo Leopold says, the last word in ignorance is the man who says of an animal or a plant, what good is it? If the land mechanism as a whole is good, then every part is good, whether we understand it or not. If the biota in the course of aeons has built something we like but do not understand, then who but a fool would discard seemingly useless parts? To keep every cog and wheel is the first precaution of intelligent tinkering. This was written in the 30s and 40s, so let me break that down for you. If we look at the world around us and we think we're the ones to say what is good and what is not, we've missed the point. If we look at everything around us, and Aldo Leopold has another quote about seeing ourselves outside of nature instead of as in nature. That we are not above nature, pointing and telling it what to do, but that we are amongst nature. We are part of the web. We are not spinning the web. We are in the web. So when we look at things and say, well, I don't like that, or this weed is really taking over my garden, I'll just say mosquitoes, okay? That is my one question to God. Why mosquitoes? But there is a purpose. There is a good. And even though we don't like them, and I am like a buffet for mosquitoes. Buffet, 5-star restaurant. They're come back for more. But if we were to eradicate all of them because we didn't like them, because we thought this is not good, it would be detrimental to the web of existence. Our job is not to determine what is good, but to determine how it is good. Our job is not to tell the environment, the community, the people of how they should be, but to recognize how we are all connected. To recognize how my choice about how I live my life and go amongst my world affects people around me, whether I want to admit it or realize it or not. We all steal each other's air. You realize that? We're all breathing the same air, but in reality, we're also stealing each other's air. Sometimes that's not a bad thing. I leave you with this. In the beginning, it was good. God is not telling Adam and Eve, make it good. God is telling Adam and Eve, see how it is good and keep it that way. Watch out, because if you plant mint and you don't put it in a pot, you're going to be eating mojitos for the whole town. But mint is good. But not everything should be running wild, chaotically wild. After every sermon, my goal, say my goal because we know life happens, is to give you a response to the wild. Homework. Some of it we'll do here within this space. Some of it will be something for you to take and do amongst yourselves. You don't have to actually bring it back. You're not going to get graded. If you want to get graded, we can talk about it. But I wrote some things on these cards that most people would probably define as not good. And I'm going to have you all pass these cards out like this so you can't see what the word is till you pick the card. No cheating. You don't get to pick your favorite not good thing. I'm trying to shuffle them. And maybe you'll learn something. I put some things in here that you might not know what it is, and you'll have to look it up. But what I invite you to do, obviously not right now in service, but to take this card and sometime today or this week to really reflect on this card. And maybe you pick something that you are like phobic of, and I apologize for that, but God is probably trying to teach you how to push through that fear, okay? Mostly for people who are afraid of spiders. One of these says spiders. And to learn and to reflect on how this thing that is often seen as a pest, as an invasive species, as something that is annoying or obnoxious is good. What purpose does it serve? Like those dang mosquitoes. So I'm going to break these in half, and y'all can grab one, and if we run out, I can make more. And let us now, as we pass these, move into our responsive hymn.